Hello there, I'm Mick and this is Hammer the Backlog, my ongoing project to assemble, repair and paint up more than 25 years of collected and neglected tabletop miniatures. What you're about to watch is my little side project, a series of videos where me and my good friend and arch nemesis Jim learn to play Warhammer Fantasy Battle 5th Edition, while presenting the results as narrative battle reports. Part 1 and Part 2 are linked in the descriptions below. Since I have a deep ingrained love of nobility, heroism and baguettes, we decided that I should play the noble and heroic Bretonnians. Jim, on the other hand, hatched out of an egg rather than being a live birth, so he's playing the lizard men. Do lizard men hatch from eggs? Probably not. Doesn't matter. On with the battles! In the last game, Jim's lizards thoroughly trounced my horse-backed ponces in a recreation of the Wrath of Tlaxcalan battle report from the pages of White Dwarf. This was a starter scenario using more or less only the forces from the 5th edition boxed set. For this battle, we decided to up the ante, playing our first full game with all of the rules. We're using my original copies of the 5th edition rules and basing our armies more or less completely on the 1000 point sample armies from the battle book, with a couple of changes here or there for pragmatic reasons. By pragmatic reasons, I mean that I don't have any 1996 Metal Cold One riders. I'm not bloody made of money. This would be our first time playing the full version of the game, including multiple army books and magic. Look, I'll put it to you straight. We definitely made mistakes, both tactically and with the rules. 1000 internet points for anyone who can spot the mistakes. In the year 2510 by Imperial reckoning, the Bretonnian village of Bregon, an outpost in distant Lustria, was roused from its slumber by a brutal attack. Foul, savage, lizard-like creatures the size of men had swarmed from the jungle under the cover of darkness and sacked the village, pillaging the town treasury and killing and injuring numerous defenders. While the ill-educated and underprepared squires and commoners managed to rouse the defence, noble knights of the realm rode to their aid, swiftly driving off the savage creatures and preventing them from doing any further harm. The creatures slinked back into the jungle with a mere handful of useless trinkets. Honour demanded, however, that the senseless attack not go unpunished, so the noble leader, Baron Marcel of Paravon, roused and gathered his forces to hunt down the beast, offering 10 ducats for the head of each beastman killed. The knights and their retainers ride out until they reach the jungle's edge at the hamlet of Marteau de Guerre, only to spot that the foul creatures have stopped running and turned to face their pursuers. As the Bretonnians level their lances, a considerably larger force looms out of the jungle. As per the rules for a meeting engagement, we rolled for the number of turns and got 5. The lizardmen are led by a level 1 Slan mage priest, Touchy Feely, the youngest of the ancient frogs from Tlaxcalan. Jim chose battle magic for his magic school and drew the spell Shield. The Saurus hero Quattle leads the Gold Claw regiment, 9 Saurus warriors including a standard bearer and musician. They are armed with hand weapons and carry shields. The Silver Claw regiment, another 9 Saurus warriors including a standard bearer and musician. They are led by a Saurus champion. Axitackle is a skink champion. He leads the Jungle Braves, 15 skinks including a standard bearer and musician. They are armed with short bows, poisoned arrows and hand weapons. The Fist of Sotek, 14 skinks armed with short bows, poisoned arrows and accompanied by a Croxagore with a 2-handed weapon. The Mauls of Sotek, 4 Croxagores armed with 200 weapons. They cause fear and can pass through marshy terrain unimpeded. Perhaps surprisingly, the lizards are joined by a unit of pike-armed human mercenaries, the Lost Legion of Pizarro. They're equipped with heavy armour and pikes, allowing up to 4 ranks to fight at once. The Baron is relieved of his command by the Red Duke of Middleton, a Bretonnian general with the Grail virtue. He rides a barded Bretonnian warhorse, wears heavy armour and a shield, and carries a lance and the Ogre Blade, giving him +2 strength. He's joined by the Bretonnian battle standard bearer, Guy le Breton. He also rides a barded Bretonnian warhorse, wears heavy armour and carries a shield, and carries the Blade of Ensorcelled Iron, giving him a +1 to hit. The Baron Marcel leads the Chevalier de Lise, 5 knights armed with swords, lances and shields, wearing heavy armour and riding barded Bretonnian warhorses. Their standard bearer carries the War Banner. The Chevalier de Etienne are joined by their lord, a Bretonnian hero with the Grail virtue. He carries the Biting Blade, giving his opponents a -1 to their armour save. He leads 5 knights armed with swords, lances and shields, wearing heavy armour and riding barded Bretonnian warhorses. They have a non-magical standard. The Regiment de Pierre, 12 Bretonnian bowmen armed with longbows and hand weapons, with a banner bearer and musician. The Regiment de Louis, 12 Bretonnian bowmen armed with longbows and hand weapons, with a banner bearer and musician. Spotting the lizard men looming from the jungle, the Bretonnians deployed across the town of Martel de Guerre. The Chevaliers de Etienne deployed on the far edge, ready to advance around the flank of the beasts. The Regiment de Pierre cleverly deployed near the farm, using the difficult ground and fences for cover. The general and battle standard bearer deployed in the middle, ready to lead the heroic charge. Marcel himself led his unit of knights between the 2 watchtowers that mark the edge of the Bretonnian frontier. Jim's greasy lizards deployed a classic refused flank, with most of his force, including his army general, deployed on the west of the battlefield, ready to absorb a charge and drag the knights from their horses. Only the brave, or slow-witted, Mauls of Sotek deployed on the east side, providing a threatening distraction to the Bretonnian lines. I won the roll for the first turn and decided I would go second. In the Lizardmen movement phase, Jim marched and wheeled his entire army to face the Bretonnians. The Croxagores, in particular, moved up into a threatening position. Since all of his units had marched, there was no shooting in Lizardmen turn 1. His army now formed a very threatening cluster, with no nice isolated units to pick off with an easy charge. For our first ever 5th edition Magic phase, Jim rolled an 11, meaning he got 6 wins of Magic cards, and I got 5. Jim got a great hand, including Escape, which would bring his general back if he was killed. With only 1 spell to cast at 2 power, Touchy-Feely cast Shield on the closest unit of Saurus warriors, letting them ignore missile fire on a dice roll of 4+. In response to the Lizardmen's deployment, both units of bowmen found themselves without good firing position. The bowmen and the farm are forced to march to the fields, while the unit by the tower have to reposition, therefore reducing their chance to hit. The boys need 6s to hit, rolling a grand total of 0 6s. Meanwhile, both units of knights wheel to attempt to get around a flank each, while the heroes move into the centre of the battlefield, eyeing up the Croxagores, the biggest and most threatening targets within range. With no wizard of their own, the Bretonnian magic phase was uneventful. In turn 2 of the Lizard's movement phase, Jim advanced his forces a little more cautiously, with the Skinks making a normal move rather than a march this time. His biggest boys, the walking crocodile men called Croxagores, wheeled to face the Bretonnian hero and banner bearer. The mage priest, Touchy-Feely, was clearly thinking that his bulwark of cold-blooded flesh would smash the tin-plated heroes and their horses. In the shooting phase, the little skinks fired arrows at the heavily armoured knights. Having moved, being over half range, and with the knights having 2+ saves, the shooting was completely ineffective. Still, the chance of even killing a single knight probably made it worth a shot. In the magic phase, I finally got a dispel card. Without a wizard on my side, and with no power cards, I needed a 5+ to dispel the magic shield on the Saurus warriors. I didn't get one. With the magic phase ended, the lizard men were in a much more forward position, practically taunting the knights to charge them. So charge them we did! The Chevalier on the west side of the map declared a charge on the skinks with the Croxigor. The skinks decided that discretion was the better part of valour and turned tail, literally, and ran for cover. The knights moved their normal distance, failing to catch them. Meanwhile, the Bretonnian lord declared loudly, "The big ones, they are mine," and charged the Croxigors. His noble banner-bearer, in a fit of nobility, nobly joined him. They both levelled their lances and charged. At this point, I think it's fair to point out that I forgot that the noble banner-bearer was a single wound model. Caught out of position by Jim's refused flank deployment, my bowmen continued to slog through the cornfield and around the tower. Both units loosed volleys again at the only targets available to them, Jim's heavily armoured, shield-bearing and magically shielded Saurus warriors. Unsurprisingly, they achieved nothing. As the Chevalier de Etienne moved around the flank to get a rear charge in later turns, first blood was spilled as the Bretonnian lord's charge thundered home. The Duke of Middleton struck first in combat, with his impressive 4 strength 7 attacks on the charge, causing 2 wounds. Needing 6s to save, Jim failed. The knightly lord was convinced he had struck down one of the fell beasts, before Jim revealed that they had 3 wounds each. Maybe this charge was a mistake. The general's steed kicked out, causing a wound, which the Croxigors saved thanks to their scaly hides. Luckily, the noble and foolhardy battle standard bearer had some strength 6 attacks to contribute, scoring a single wound. Jim needed a 6 to save, which he failed, resulting in 3 wounds caused and the first casualty of the game. The standard bearer's horse chipped in, showing the general's horse how it's done, and causing another unsaved wound. To the general's horror, and to mine, one of the Croxigors got to strike back, smashing the battle standard bearer from his horse and killing him outright. Nobly. Still, with 4 wounds to 1, the knights win the combat. Thanks to their cold-blooded feature, the Croxigors need to roll less than 5 on 3d6, removing the highest dice score. They failed and fled. Every set of butt cheeks in the room clenched as Jim rolled for panic tests for his entire army, since they were all within range of the combat. Luckily for him, or sadly for me, they all passed. The Croxigor's flight was slow and disorganised, and the Bretonnian hero ran them down, destroying the unit and securing the first victory point for the men. At the end of turn 2, first blood may have gone to the men, but their battle bearer was down and the lord was all on his own, surrounded by angry lizards. At the start of turn 3, as Jim's fleeing skinks reform, they take advantage of their ability to move through marshes unimpeded and face the rest of the army. Meanwhile, Pizarro's Lost Legion are inspired, as if from thin air, to move up to the tower, blocking the gap between the knights and the lizards and practically daring the Chevalier to charge the wall of pikes. The noble Bretonnians attempt to reason with their fellow men, shouting to them in Bretonnian, "Eh, comment tu t'appelles?" All they receive back is some high-pitched, rapid gibberish. Obviously, they've lost their minds. Or no one speaks Estalian. In what might have been an illegal move, because we weren't sure about facing in charges for skirmishers, the Jungle Braves charged the Bretonnian knightly lord. Surely they couldn't beat him. They must have some other plan. Meanwhile, the awkward-to-move heavy metal models representing the Saurus warriors kept falling over as they continued to advance on the bowmen, ignoring the arrows that pinged off their shields, heavy hides and magical barrier. Since his army was either engaged or reformed, the lizards had no shooting in turn 3. In combat, the rather too brave Skink Braves lost 4 of their number, 3 to the Lord with the Ogre Blade, and 1 trampled under the hooves of his noble warhorse Vera. Despite being cold-blooded and standing right beside that big fat frog, they rolled terribly on their break test and run, just about staying out of reach of the pursuing general. In the magic phase, Touchy-Feely recast Shield on the second unit of Saurus, totally uncontested. The Bretonnians really need to find themselves a damsel. In the Bretonnians' turn, what was there to do but charge? The Chevalier de Lys turned their mounts and goaded them, almost against their will, to charge into the hedgehog of sharp points facing them down. The pikemen, unsurprisingly, held ground. The knights drove on, but their horses faltered in the face of the wall of steel, giving each of the 4 ranks of pikemen 2 attacks, letting them strike first, and depriving the horses of attacks. Look, would it be Hammer the Backlog if Mick wasn't making poor tactical decisions? As this clash of steel and flesh happened, the general continued to chase the skinks. A smarter man would have noticed that my most dangerous model was being led a merry chase away from the battle, but the Bretonnians value honour, not critical thinking skills. In the shooting phase, the 2 units of bowmen, now standing still and with a clear eye on their targets, managed to bring down a Saurus warrior each. In the much anticipated clash of pike and lance, Jim goes first, rolling 22 dice to hit. This looks more like 8th edition now, not 5th edition. Needing 4s to hit, exactly half go through. Satisfying statistics. Luckily for the knights, the pikes are still only strength 3, so very few wound, and none get through the armour. Phew! 3 of Pizarro's men are struck down in return, a banner result for the knights. The pikemen lose the combat badly and turn to flee. The rest of the Lizardmen army, cold-blooded as they are, seem unaffected. Before the pikemen can run all the way back to Estalia, they're caught by the triumphant knights and run down. Another victory point for Mick, plus a 3rd for the captured banner. Am I winning? With several broken or destroyed units and 2 full units of knights threatening their flanks, it looks like the Bretonnians only have a little mopping up to do. At the start of the next turn, with things looking poor for the Coldbloods, Jim's movement is full of events. The unit of skinks on the flank declare a charge through the soft cover of the marsh into the flank of the Knights of the Realm. Luckily for the Knights, in lance formation, they don't really have a flank, so it still counts as a frontal charge. The unit of skink braves that have led the general on a merry dance reform in front of him in rank and file, ready to take a charge. Brave indeed. The rest of Touchy-Feely's army forgoes movement, instead pivoting away from the archers, who are now little more than a nuisance, and reforming their ranks to face the rampaging knights. In combat, the little skinky boys flail ineffectually against the knights, scoring wounds, but none of them managing to get through the knights' impressive armour saves. The Croxagore, with his huge 2-handed axe, has a much better chance of killing the knight. He scores 2 wounds. I needed 6 to saves. I get 1 and 1 goes through. Maybe this battle isn't as in the bag as I thought it was. The magic war banner gives me +1 to combat resolution and squeaks out a win for the Bretonnians. Only losing by 1 and well within their general's range, and cold-blooded, the lizards stay in combat. At the end of the lizard turn, combat is well and truly joined, and the second unit of knights are chomping at the bit for a battle-winning charge. In Bretonnian turn 4, the Chevalier d'Etienne get an incredible dose of tunnel vision, seeing only targets and glory in front of them. They declare a charge on the weaker unit of Saurus warriors, who promptly flee. The charge falters, leaving my most powerful unit standing around looking at a horde of revenge-minded lizards ready to countercharge them. Oopsie. In a more successful charge, the general charges the reformed skink braves. Too close for them to get shots off with their short bows, they hold. He'll cut a bloody row through them, but will their sacrifice be worth keeping him out of the centre? The bowmen, who'd been mostly useless for the whole battle, lobbed a few arrows at the fleeing unit of Saurus warriors. Despite their armour, shields and magic, a few kills get through. In the now protracted combat on the western side, 3 noble knights strike back against the little wet slaps of the skinks, needing only 2s to hit. What could possibly go wrong? Oh right, that. The real heroes of Bretonnia, the horses, actually managed to kill 2 skinks. Finally, in the moment I'm dreading, Jim gets to strike with his Croxagore. Every hit will probably kill a knight. He gets to roll 3 dice, needing only 4s to hit, and he rolls the worst dice in human history. The slap fight's going to continue for another round. The general, meanwhile, kills 3 of the brave little skinks, but their ranks and banner keep them in the fight. In turn 5, the battle hangs on a knife's edge. For Jim's final turn, the smaller unit of Saurus warriors reform facing the bowmen, while the more dangerous unit, containing the Strength 5, 4-attack Saurus hero, declare a charge on the out-of-position Chevaliers d'Etienne. Suddenly, the noble Bretonnians feel their victory slipping away from them. In close combat, the Duke of Middleton once again swings the ogre blade and decapitates 3 more skinks. However, it dawns on him that he's become bogged down by cheap disposable skirmishers, while his knights are being pulled from their horses and slaughtered in the centre. He feels like what the Bretonnians call les incompetents. In the western stalemate, the horses once again outshine their masters, killing 2 skinks to the knights' 1. The Croxagore in the skink unit once again proves his value, swiping 2 more knights of the realm off their horses and into the filthy marsh. Again, thanks to their horses' kills and their magic banner, the Bretonnians just about win this combat. Jim's lizards are unbothered. In what's going to be the climactic battle, Jim's Saurus warrior hero tears into the knights, scoring 3 strength 5 hits and needing only 2s to wound. Classic Jim! The rest of the charging Saurus warriors managed to kill a knight, resulting in 2 dead knights and none able to strike back. Only the Grail Knight hero struck back, killing a single Saurus warrior. At the end of Jim's turn 5, every combat was locked in a stalemate. It all hangs on the last Bretonnian round. Will the Bretonnians be able to hold out to let the fates decide, or will the lizard's superior numbers win out? Find out next time on Hammer the Backlog. No, I'm just messing. Of course we finished it. With my army bogged down in combat, there was no movement. The bowmen continued to attempt to whittle away at the Saurus warriors, but Jim's damned magical shield really did ruin my shooting. Only 1 casualty. In the final rounds of combat, the Duke, perhaps distracted by the sounds of dying knights, completely flubs his attacks in a bout of Jim-style dice rolling. On the western side, the knights' magic banner keeps them in it again. They kill 1 skink, but the 4th of their number is dragged off his horse in the Croxagore's jaws. On the eastern side, a true hero of the realm, a Grail Knight, is struck from his horse and killed by the Saurus hero. A second knight dies attempting to come to his aid. As turn 5 comes to a close and the sun sets, the 2 fully intact units of bowmen are more or less where they started. My noble knights, the shining beacon of Bretonnian chivalry, are being dragged from their horses and torn apart with tooth and claw. Touchy-feely hasn't raised a hand in anger the whole battle, simply casting magic and inspiring his troops. My general, crestfallen at the outcome, is losing fights to skinks. In the end, with every unit still alive on the Bretonnian side, the Lost Legion banner captured and 2 units wiped out, the Bretonnians win this one 3 victory points to 1. very much a Pyrrhic victory, as turn 6 may well have seen the knights wiped out to a man. If you enjoyed this battle report, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. Sadly, there are no more specific scenarios for me and Jim to play with our knights and lizards, so we'd love to hear from you some more suggestions for what we should play next. Leave a comment down below if you have any ideas. Thanks for watching this though. You're the best eggs.